Welcome, everyone, and happy Thursday. It is noon Eastern time in the booming metropolis known as Ambler, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia, PA. Noon Eastern time, PA, Philadelphia, Ambler. It's time for Talent Experience Live, the show that covers everything that you need to know in talent acquisition, recruiting, talent management, human resources as a whole. And today, skills. I want to first shout out the good folks here at Phenom who put this show on a weekly basis, whose purpose is to help 1 billion folks find the right work. That is why we host this program, all of our other podcasts, our webinars, our events, and everything in between, including I Am Phenom, which was just a few short months ago, and where I had a fantastic conversation with Lucas Watanabe of Deloitte. But before we get into that, of course, I have to pay the bills. The way that we truly help 1 billion find the right work is through our Intelligent Talent Experience platform, which helps candidates find the right fit faster, employees evolve in their current roles and beyond, recruiters achieve next level productivity and efficiency, and managers, who could forget about them? They build better teams through data, analytics, and insights. If any of this interests you at all, immediately following this program, don't walk to phenom.com to learn more. But please don't leave, because this is a fantastic episode. I mentioned it is with Lucas of Deloitte, and we are talking about why now is the time to invest in skills. Lucas was a wealth of knowledge. I wish I could have him on today to talk about it more, because I didn't want the conversation to end. We talked about all of the questions and why truly, if you're not investing in skills at this moment, you're in some big trouble. So I will no longer spoil the rest of the episode. I hope you enjoy it and can't wait to hear from you in the comments section afterwards. Special thank you to Lucas again. But without any further hesitation, here's the episode. Lucas, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
How are you today?
It's great.
Yeah, awesome. Here we are. I Am Phenom. Before we get into kind of what you're all here about and what Deloitte is representing, love for you to tell the audience at home a little bit about yourself, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. So great to meet you. So Lucas Watanabe, I'm a managing director at Deloitte. Spend all of my time advising companies about their human capital challenges as it relates to things like skills, learning, the entire life cycle of learning and workforce transformation. Been in the space for about 20 years, and I'm tremendously passionate about everything that we do.
Yeah, skills conversations picked up over the past few years.
It has.
For me, back in the day, it used to be kind of one of those jokes on LinkedIn, and now it's a real conversation. So I want to ask you, what does it truly mean to be a skills-based organization? Like, how does that become practice for organizations?
Yeah, so whether you call it skills-based organization, skills first, skills approaches, it's all the same thing. It's about putting skills at the center and to be the connector across talent processes. So for example, right, I'm a managing director. If you were just look at my title, you have no visibility to what I actually have as skills. You can kind of generalize. Yeah. But the great thing about skills is that we're able to get more granular into the actual things that people know, do, and have passion in, so that you can connect them from opportunity to opportunity, as well as help them think about their own personalized learning and development. Yeah. So to me, it's at the center of talent processes, and it's a connector of them.
Yeah, it's interesting. You bring up title, and immediately the thought that pops into my head, it's kind of like shopping for cars, right? Yeah. If I tell you that I have a Lamborghini, you probably assume that I have super quick little coupe, and that I make way more money than I actually do. I don't have a Lamborghini, but there are obviously multiple options in there, right? So you can have the SUV, you can have one of the sports cars, I'm sure they have racing cars and things like that, which is where you start to get granular. You mentioned it being a connector, right, of organizations, and that's often where we run into challenges with everything, right? Football players, they run into connection issues with their wide receivers. Yeah. What are some of the challenges that organizations face as they take on this skills-based approach?
So I'm going to use your analogy of the Lamborghini. I love that analogy, by the way, because we can all aspire, right? Yes. But so one of the things when it comes to organizations and what they want to do with skills is to clearly define what's the end goal, right? So like if you're going car shopping, you have to actually know, am I buying a car because I want a fast hot rod, or do I want an SUV because I have to take my family to soccer, right? Like it's one of those discussions around what's the end goal that you're trying to achieve. I work with a lot of organizations where unfortunately they spin on that for a while. They don't have either the right voice in the conversation, or there's too many voices in the conversation, so they can't actually figure out what's most important and what do we want to rally around.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Come up with your North Star and be very clear in what you're focused on and for what reasons.
Yeah. No, when you're car shopping, right, there are a plethora of options. And if you spin your wheels too long, right, if you're waiting around, all of a sudden there's going to be new technology that is going to come into play, whether it's self-driving or something like that. And that only complicates the issue,
Absolutely.
right, moving forward. I think that kind of touches to my next point a little bit, which is why it's important to invest in skills now, right, so that you're getting ahead of the curve. But you are far better at explaining that than myself. So why should an organization say, hey, there's no better time to invest in skills than right now?
Well, so Devin, to your point, the pace of change today is far faster and fiercer than it has ever been.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about business challenges, growth challenges, compliance challenges, regulatory challenges. The pace of change is pronounced. And even more so, the pace of change for us as human beings is growing even faster. So if we're to rely on traditional methods for understanding of who a person is and rely on traditional talent processes and only rely on that, we're kind of looking backwards in the rearview mirror, to play an analogy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the cool thing about skills is that it doesn't have to be permanent. In fact, it's not, right?
Yeah.
The half-life of skills changes so frequently. If an organization doesn't focus on it today, then they've already lost the game.
Yeah. That makes sense. And we mentioned all of these stakeholders that have to be involved. Leadership being one, right? Buy-in. Kind of like me trying to get buy-in from my wife to purchase a Lamborghini that I can't afford. As we approach this, those conversations are often difficult, right? Because in order to truly get a grandiose look at skills as a whole, you're going to need technology, right?
Yes.
You're going to need some sort of AI, which is going to cost money. So how can talent leaders approach this to get buy-in from leadership?
Yeah, so I look at it kind of maybe more as a personalized way to create buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly you'll have your business leaders that have a distinct business need, whether it's growth objectives, revenue objectives, compliance objectives, business capability building, right? Yeah. So to be able to create a narrative and a story on how skills helps fulfill their pipeline of people and talent to execute on that, that's their narrative. Mm-hmm. The HR narrative might be different. The HR narrative might be, we all know that HR BPs are, riled in processes. There's tons of them. Mm-hmm. There's a complexity in how they have to address those processes based off the geography or different business units. And plus, they're just strapped for time. Yeah. So what's the narrative to create for them the notion that skills can create a more simplistic process and help them in their own jobs? Yeah. And then naturally, for the line level managers and people like us, mm-hmm. the whole narrative around how skills can create and unlock different career opportunities for us, that's the gold. Yeah. So to me, it's about creating the right narrative for the person that you're trying to create the story for.
Absolutely. And from a leadership perspective, it might be tough to conceptualize how truly granular skills are. Like when we talk about an individual basis, my skill set is not necessarily something that I think leadership would sit down at a board meeting and discuss, right? But when you think about an entire employee base, are there challenges that companies run into where they maybe overcomplicate things by getting too granular, since it is a large task to implement these sort of thought processes?
So Devin, one of the things that I would say is a watch out and maybe a point of guidance so that skills don't collapse on itself is to not try and engineer the entire infrastructure for skills and then start doing something with it, right? It's one of those where this is definitely a pilot approach. There's mm-hmm. definitely a pilot and test and learn type mentality.
Yep.
Try something with skills, whether it's to use skills to help unlock talent through talent acquisition, or use skills to help unlock career opportunities both internally and externally for your workforce so that a business leader can achieve their growth opportunities or whatever it may be. But if you build the whole thing, mm-hmm. take 2 years building the infrastructure and the process and then start releasing it, it would have already folded on itself.
And the skills are outdated, right?
Skills are outdated. Well. You lose stakeholder buy-in and energy. I mean, there's not many business leaders that are wait that long to see results happen, right?
It's not many people are waiting that long to see results happen now.
When we talk about piloting, right? A test drive, if you will. I'm going
Yeah.
to stick with this analogy
I like
throughout.
it.
I'm going to try.
Yeah.
How can organizations truly hone in on selecting a group, right? You look at an
Yeah.
entire organization, departments, individual levels. What are some things that they can focus on to pilot with the correct group first?
It's a great question. And actually, there's kind of two different schools of thought here. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to say which one is right for every situation. I think it's all cultural or whatever the business is and what they have ahead of them. You have one school of thought around pilots on pilot in a fairly benign part of the organization where if you try something and it doesn't work, it's okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not going to cripple the business. Some characteristics of that pilot group might be 20% of the population, not a risk-based process, not having to report compliance objectives, something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
We have another school of thought, though, that says, hey, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this to hit on one of the biggest problems that we have as a business, and it might be those things like growth challenges, or it might be infrastructure or technology capabilities that we need to invest in. AI, right?
Yeah.
So it's a matter of, based on the cultural nuance of the organization, what's the right approach? I will say though, in either situation, whether whether an organization wants to go pilot in a relatively kind of not a risk area versus big bang, be very intentional that is the group that you're going after, and that is the reason.
Yeah. I would imagine and stick with that group, right? Slowly expand on that 20% or slowly trickle down from what's most important to.
Yeah.
And it depends on the organization, right? How risk averse are you willing to be with this to find success? You mentioned AI there, especially as a skill of need, and it's in every conversation, everywhere right now. How is that playing a role in the adaptation of skills and in the skills conversation altogether?
Oh, well, I think it's a game changer.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, like we were having this conversation about skills 2-3 years ago, and we cannot have said that there are possibilities to, around skills and skills tagging and skills inference 3 years ago than we can today.
Yeah.
Today with AI, not just on the inference and the ability to understand people and their skills, but to connect it across the talent process, that's gold.
Yeah.
On top of that, as people are starting to experiment with AI, they're starting to understand that there is gold there. So we're not going to question the capability. We're just going to try and experiment with it. And that's all about it. Right? Like experiment with skills and try and do something. The best advice I once got when it came to experimenting with a pilot group, whether small pilot group or big team, is create your friendlies in the organization, find the groups and the leaders that are willing to work with you, because as you do experiment and as you do test things out with AI or HR processes, you'll need those friendlies to see the value in it, and then certainly encourage your managers and their employees to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think that speaks to technology as a whole isn't necessarily enough, right? And it's going to break from time, whether we want to admit it or not. Things are not going to run smoothly. We see that with onboarding processes. We see that with any implementation of technology. What else do companies need? Is it just simply friendlies, to your point, or what do companies need to make sure that this tech, when it does break, no one gives up on it? I think is the question I'm asking there.
Yeah, I'll go back to the point on having a very clear North Star and a very clearly bought-in pilot group or population. You're right. When you're experimenting with something as fresh and as frankly important as skills, we won't get it right the first time, but we're going to get it right.
Yeah.
So to be able to continue to go back and say, hey, we'll make incremental changes and we'll improve on what we found out that we broke is important.
The other aspect of that is got to be governance, right, around it. Because we are talking about human beings at the end of the day. We're talking about AI, specifically when it comes to, I wouldn't call it decision-making process. It's not an AEDT when we're rolling it out like this. But how important is setting governance, is setting guidelines for this, rollout for it to be successful?
I think setting governance is fundamental.
Okay.
It's, whether you're talking about extremely strong governance or just governance of friendlies, at least some guardrails around what the organization is going to do with skills, what data they're going to pull in, what processes they're going to address or touch on, and how they're going to roll it out. That governance or guardrails on this is our clear North Star is critically important.
Yeah.
Interesting thing, when we do work with organizations around governance, there's a couple of things that they're going to want to govern, right? The skills taxonomy and the skills itself, the skills technologies and how they're used, the skills processes and what they might mean for talent processes or business processes, and then certainly what we're going to do and how we're going to drive that change in the organization. So I would say whether you're the type of organization that's going to take the strong governance approach or the governance of friendlies, still make sure that you're talking about those 4 things.
Okay. Setting that clear North Star, is that also something that will help employees buy in?
Oh,
we talk about all this.
Yeah.
That's the biggest challenge, right?
Yeah.
Is we've rolled out this skills taxonomy, we have everything in place, but our employees aren't using it, right?
Yeah.
Is that one example of a way to implement it successfully, I guess?
So I think so.
Yeah.
But be transparent about that, about the North Star outcomes for that employee. So
Okay.
As an example, if you're an organization that's thinking or experimenting with skills, and you have, let's say, a skills community of practice or a skills team that's trying something, but you only do it in a vacuum and you actually don't show and tell the employee what and how they're going to benefit from it, you're going to incubate too long and you're going to cook the egg, right? Like it's never going to hatch. One of the things about skills is as you are starting to experiment with it, be very intentional about how you're communicating the benefit to the employee, but be ready for the questions that you're going to get from them, such as they're going to want to know, what are you going to do with my data? They're going to want to know, how does this change the traditional processes that I might be more accustomed to?
Yeah.
And they're going to certainly want to know, does this unlock something for me personally? And if so, how can I take advantage of it? So answering those questions would be important.
Yeah, and that's something that I've never thought of. Obviously, the what's in it for me is very important, but you think of maybe people who have longer careers, right? Longer tenures at an organization. They're used to processes to get to that next level, right? And maybe they're on that 9th out of 10 steps to get that bonus, to get that promotion, whatever it may be. I could see some animosity towards a new implementation of how is this going to change what I've worked so hard for, right? Is there a kind of balancing act between that of implementing existing what's in it for me for employees versus adding this new skills conversation to it?
Yeah, so maybe we'll play on that example. So let's say that there's some formal curriculum or formal certification process that somebody's going through and they're almost at the end, right? Their end goal. I would say that to put it in the frame of this will certainly not replace you getting to your end goal, right? Like you're on the path, great, continue. But now, as a perceived subject matter expert, leader, credible person within the organization, you now have not just the ability to showcase your badge or your certification or whatever it may be, you're now able to use your knowledge to help the business, or use your knowledge to help others on your team, use your knowledge and feed it back to the organization on things they could improve on, right? Because you have all of those skills that wouldn't have been surfaced by just plastering my certification on the wall.
Yeah. There may be a reason why you were fast-tracked to get to that close finish line that wasn't apparent before.
Absolutely.
And that can help you grow and you can pass that knowledge along. Obviously, we're talking, about the conversation. Some companies are ahead of the game. They've already implemented a skills-based approach. What, advice do you have for them moving forward, continuing this conversation?
Yeah, I guess a couple of points. For those organizations that have already started, congratulations, great job, thank you.
Yeah.
Because it is something that we've been talking about for quite some time as an unlock for human capital in the workforce. A couple of things that I think they could do. If they've piloted it within one part of the organization, certainly scale their pilot and celebrate successes.
Yep.
Invariably, when I work with companies and I start off a conversation with, let's say, a skills core team or a team that's charged with doing something with skills, as we move through the journey, they find that there are many other parts of the organization that are also experimenting with skills. So for a company that has started something or incubated something, their next step might be find all the other parts of the organization that are trying to do something with skills and help unlock them too.
Okay.
They'll also probably learn that there's a lot of great things that those other parts of the business or the other skills initiatives would have done that they could tap into. So that's number one. The other thing is the skills community, or I would say the human capital or HR community, or frankly the business community, we're all talking about skills. So for those organizations that have done something great with it, share it, right? Like connect through your COPs, connect through industry channels, talk about what you've done, talk about what worked, talk about what didn't work. Those lessons learned are invaluable as for other organizations trying to go down that journey.
And as different organizations, start to expand, start to talk about their successes and maybe even their challenges, right? You're going to get feedback from other industries who may have had a similar challenge or whatever it may be, and you become a thought leader. We're past the conceptual point of this, we're into the implementation. Let's see how it works, but it's still early stages, right? You are starting to see companies really thrive with it, I imagine. Out of curiosity, are there any industries that are really attaching to this early on? Is it kind of SaaS or technology based? Is it more industrial? What does it look like from that perspective? Obviously important to every industry, but curious there.
So it is important to every industry. So I wouldn't say there's one industry per se that's going head first more than others.
Okay.
But what they are doing is they're going into different parts of the organization faster than others. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So naturally, if you're in the technology sector, technology industry, tech skills, tech talent, that's where we see a lot of upskilling. Additionally to that might be adjacent sales, right, as they're selling products and services. I'll flip it. For those organizations that might be more industrial products, their issues and their skills might be more regulatory based around health, safety, and environment, right? So their skills and skills initiatives might be around safety, compliance, and getting people to work in a manufacturing or industrial setting safely and compliantly. On the financial services side, their skills focus might be around regulatory compliance and the ability to prove risk management within the regulatory framework.
It's you mentioned sales there, and that's what I recruited for early stages of my career, and I remember how difficult it was because you have this concept of what skills are, right, and what they can be, but type A personalities, all this sort of things, outgoing individuals, but some of the most successful sales folks are kind of quiet, kept to themselves. They can write a fantastic email, and it depends on your organization and how you truly grow. So I was just curious. That was my own thing. I want to ask you one final question, I promise. Any advice or last thought that we may have missed on that I didn't get a chance to ask you for the audience at home, looking to implement skills or maybe keep that momentum going?
Yeah, a couple of, words of wisdom or just advice. Everybody will hear the notion start and do something. It is true. I'll put a qualifier on that. Start and do something, but be very intentional around what you do. So if it means that you have to spend more time clarifying your North Star, your strategy around what you're going to do with skills, such as what talent process you're going to embed it in, what population or critical workforce segment you're going to roll it out to, and what the definition of your pilot is. If that takes you more time to align on, do it. Because if not, what's going to happen is it'll start, and then you'll have to cycle back 3 or 4 times to clarify, is that really what we needed? Is that really what we meant? So that's number one. Another lesson learned is, as you are starting to pilot something, it's okay if it wasn't right, but don't give up, right? Because the whole premise of skills as a way to unlock human potential is, it is an add-on to jobs. It's a complement for how we do work. It's a way to connect people to the work they do and create and unlock passions. To me, it's worth it. So don't give up.
Yeah, no, you can't run a marathon without taking that first step, right? And even if you tried before, you can always try again.
That's right.
Maybe just adjust your training pattern to get there. That's how that's where it sounded in my head. Lucas, thank you so much. If folks want to reach out to you, learn more, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so certainly on LinkedIn, and I'm sure there'll be my name on the screen. So
Yeah,
feel
of
free to
course,
reach out.
of course.
This is something that I live every single day. It's an area that I'm passionate about. It's an area that I know that you all are passionate about,
Yes.
and through the ecosystem of partners and people just, frankly, just interested in it. The community around and the interest for it is that much more powerful. So yes, please do reach out. My pleasure to have an offline conversation.
And I'm going to bet my bottom dollar, this is the first time a Lamborghini has made it into the skills conversation, isn't it?
I actually like that.
You can have that. That one's on me. Lucas, thank you so much.
My
I appreciate
pleasure,
it. Have a good one.
Pleasure.